Hey, brother.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, good. How about yourself?
Good. I got this recording, so we're good. We're gonna do this one audibly. I can't get proper Wi-Fi for video, so the fact about like really where you go with being really well-rounded and mind focused and mental health focused, and when you focus on those things and you're empathetic to other people, you know, the definition of being a man can kind of contradict other people's definition of being a man. Is that something that we could figure out how to navigate that?
Yeah, because I think ultimately, one, we're both very heart-centered people, and I'm just a person figuring it out, just like everybody else. That's what I remind people.
Yeah, so
It's like, look, just do the best that you can.
So let's use that as the jumping point, and let's
Okay.
kind of focus it on, you know, being a good person and putting good things out there, and let's even extend it to like the empathy of other people. So like I'll just directly ask a question that I know I'll answer mine as well, honestly, but like for you, you're walking down the street and there's a man with crutches and he's on the ground and his other crutch is 4 feet away. You keep walking, or what do you do in that scenario?
Okay.
Yeah, we'll start with that as a metaphor.
Yeah.
All right, so go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. So you're walking down the street. We're going to give this scenario here. It's kind of an example of instinctually how you would react. And you don't see him fall or anything like that. You have no idea. You see and you assume a situation where what is your assumption in that situation? Is you're inclined to help, you're inclined to continue, and kind of where do you go from there?
Yeah. So for me, my first inclination is to support him. Ask him, hey, do you need help? And see if he's able to respond to me or not. And if he's able to respond to me, get the crutch and help him out.
You know, yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, and then there's the other piece, because empathy it's constantly going through perspectives. And so let's say something happened to a family member of mine. I might run right past that guy and not even notice that he's reaching for his crutch. And so now it's up to him if he's going to have empathy with me, saying maybe he's rushing for somewhere. And so I go, it can be a complex topic because there's so many nuances to being an empathetic person.
Dude, I gotta be honest with you. In the past 8 days, I've spent a lot of time thinking about some of these concepts, and the way you just described that metaphor just gave me a whole different perspective on it, and I really appreciate that. And that kind of unintentionally kind of leads into what I'm saying is, and it goes back to what you've talked about many times on this show is looking between your mind's eye, looking behind your eye, things like that. On the flip side is understanding that what you see in front of you is not always what somebody else sees in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think that
the game is it's a trip.
You know, and I think like my biggest thing is always, and I've always lived a life that's very ingrained in all cultures, all political beliefs, all financial situations and everything like that. So I've constantly walked the tightrope since I was a child. And so living this life right now, what I've seen in my specific experience and my lens is where there was a time where we had that conversation or that situation would come up and exactly like you said, it was like graded to the scenario. And I get this fear that like, instead of that empathetic moment of pause or consideration of other people's lenses and perspectives, I feel we've really, and this is not just in the past week, I just feel like as a society, we've really walked to this reactionary, and it's either like blaming someone for being on the ground, being so far away from their crutch, or just straight up ignoring that the person even exists in the earth because we don't want to accept that that's going on in front of us.
Yeah. It's it's interesting because, I don't even remember the leader who said this, but I absolutely respect it. Be the change.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look at the change, I'm like, oh, well, I can be there for someone. And in me being there for someone can see it. And maybe they'll be there for someone. And it'll create a ripple effect.
That's the biggest thing. And I think one thing I'm seeing from my side and my middle of the road kind of lens that I have, where I just kind of toe both lines every day of my life, is what you just said about being the change. But also, I think that, and this has also been seen indicatively of like the view counts and the demand and of our different episode styles, that like are in the present physically with our guests is a higher consumed product than our Zooms currently, and that's been a shift. And with that, I think it's also kind of a reflection on our society too, that I think people are looking more locally now than they were looking regionally and nationally before.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it is interesting, like having that live experience. That even makes me go back into my athletic career. If I don't see something that's happening right in front of me, I'm not gonna watch it. I'm that person, and when it comes to like movies, I'm that person who will watch a movie like 10 years after it's been out, because I know I can watch it whenever I want to watch it.
That's
Oh man, did you see Gremlins 2? Like, yeah, Cliff, like a decade ago.
you just finally finished the Willow, right? Dude, that's so with that, like that part as well. Like I want to talk a little bit about, and I don't want this to have any reflection at all about us giving advice to people or telling people how to be. But I'm curious, and I'll go first, as to sharing the ways and the lessons that I'm trying to teach my son. And this is before what's going on. This is before this. So one of the things is that my biggest pride in my life is my son. I'll talk about my daughter on another episode, but specifically we'll talk about my son. My son is the one that when he's in a wrestling match and he beats a kid, or like some kid falls down or is hurt or whatever else, he reaches out his hand and he like pulls that kid up. He hugs every single opponent that he has. He talks to the kids after the matches and before the matches. And I didn't really instill that or ingrain that into him. It's very much, I was the same way when I was a kid. So I think it comes with that like other aspect of things. And I think like what I wanted to kind of talk about was the fine line that we walk, and I'm obviously not as deep into a life dedication of athletics as you are, but being around it as a parent and then as a participant when I was younger, let's talk a little bit about the fine line of like competitive sportsmanship while also dealing with that, competitive sportsmanship. You know what I mean? Like, what is sportsmanship, and then what is being competitive, and then where do they meet, and then how do they coexist, I guess, and then how do we kind of how do we instill that into others?
You know what's so cool? I love the question, and there's a part of me that says we define it.
Yep.
The human being defines it. So there might be people just like you and your son who pick a person up and give them a hug, and there might be people who push people down and laugh at them and say, I won. And so I say that it's always the individual going into definition. But I'll share with you a story that happened with me. I like doing right by people. It feels good to do right by people. Whether I'm fighting against them or collaborating, even in a fight, that is a collaboration to me.
Correct.
Because in my head, it's the highest level achievers. Let's see who the better one is. I want them to bring their best game. I don't want to be like, oh man, I hope he was sick last night and he can't show up. No, I want the best. I want to see who I am.
That's a really good point, and it's something that I've been talking to somebody recently about, and it's so I want to kind of like, there's a piece of that too where there was a point when you and I are about the same age, where life was a little bit different as far as how you resolved conflict with other people. Mm-hmm. And when you resolved conflict in a strategic way of respect, there was, like, I go back to rugby, for example. Like, in rugby, you literally beat the shit out of each other for the entire match, and then you go to the bar together and you drink together. And it's called one of the original gentlemen's sports. And and it's always been like this thing that I go back to every time I run into conflict in my life with other people's personalities. And I'm like, is this the type of person that would be able to throw, like, bleed with me and fight with me on the rugby field against me, but also still be able to put all that aside to have a beer with me and sing songs together?
Yeah.
And that's been a very big metric or meter for me with a lot of things in my life. And obviously I don't drink anymore, but I still socialize and hang out in bars. And I think that if more people, I will say this, I think if more people took that time to analyze people that way, I think we could get farther with some of these complicated conversations.
Yeah. So I love that, and I agree. And I'd also say, life's a game of awarenesses. And so when we're aware of something new, then we can start seeing it as a society even. Like, I loved how Martin Luther King, he said, I want someone to be judged by the content of their character and not the color of their skin. And I actually want to take that to an even deeper level and say, hey, we can actually condition character. We can condition this thing. We don't have to judge anybody. We can love people and we can support them and we can make them better for the society as a whole. We can all win together.
No, you're exactly right. And I think, like, we can all agree, and everybody should be able to agree that the only way anything goes together as a mass society is without a 50-50 split. So, yeah. It's interesting. I wanted to share something with you that also kind of triggered this conversation. Is so this year my son decided that he doesn't want to wrestle this year, and he wants to come back to it later. But he doesn't want to wrestle this year because of in our area where we live, the parents are very intense, and to a point not like when we were kids, and they're very much more involved, and they're very aggressive about things. And I think, like, what he said was, he's like, you know what, and this is a bit of mine where I did was like, it's for fun and it's competitive, and instead, what he came to me was, it wasn't like a kid that's like, I don't want to do it, I'm just going to sit back on my screen. He came to me and he's like, instead of doing an organized sport and all that, he's like, how about you and I go do, like, jiu-jitsu, and then we go get a gym membership?
Oh.
And I got chills even just retelling you this story right now, because, like, I really liked that, because it wasn't like what I usually am used to. Even from him, he's done that in the past, where he's like, I don't want to do something, then he just never, it's like nothing else comes through from it. And I really enjoyed that, and I really felt inspired by that, where he was like, he really, like, it stuck to the very reason as to why, because it was like, I don't want to not be active, I don't want to not be in athletics. He's like, there's just this one feature that I don't like about athletics, and it makes it not fun for me. And I guess that's, like, it's interesting, because I, as well as yourself, have to take a different lens because of our experiences, because those eyes and that yelling and all that stuff for me, and I'm sure the same for you, that was an energy accelerator for me. Yeah. So if somebody screamed in my face so close that spit was coming out of their mouth, for me, it wasn't, and for him, it's not a back down and run away. Him and I had a very long conversation about it. It was actually really empowering on his end. He was like, I just don't have to do that, so why would I choose to have that in my life?
Yeah.
And I really, like, was blown away, like, when he said that. And I was like, hell yeah, dude. Like, in a sense, like, that's setting boundaries at 13 years old that I'm now learning at 39.
That's super cool. I love that.
So now, yeah, so maybe I'll be able to hold my own in a couple months when I come down and bother you in Arizona after a couple of these jiu-jitsus.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest thing. I had one of my friends, me and him were sparring, and his girlfriend came to watch us, and he goes, "Hey, make me look good. My girl's watching." and I did. And now I'll share another story too. So I had a guy from the gym, and there's this protein shake place, and I'm not going to say the name because I want to keep him in privacy. But
and they're not a sponsor either. We only talk about brands that pay us.
Yeah, if you want to sponsor, then we'll say it. But, so I'm at the protein shake place, and this guy, like, I'm having a good conversation with the guy. Like, yeah, well, I train over at ACS, and he goes, "Oh man, oh, you're so cool. I actually hate that place." I go, "Oh crap, like what happened?" And he tells me a story. He ended up sparring with one of the guys that I know. And I've heard him to be a bully. He's never bullied me, but bullies don't bully people they can't. So
exactly.
That's neither here nor there.
It's another one of those it'll never happen in front of you.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, as long as Cliff's eyes are closed, we're good. And he ends up telling the story. It was him and his girl. And now this guy doesn't have a lot of sparring experience. And he goes, "Hey, you want to spar?" He's like, "Yeah, I'd love to spar." He goes, "But I don't really have a lot of experience." And our guy goes, "Oh, you're good. Like, we're going to go light." Dude, the guy knocked him out.
Oh.
And I mean, it was a one-punch knockout. And he remembers, he goes, and he did it on purpose. He had this look in his eyes. And what was interesting, the guy remembers that to this day. That was like a couple years ago. And so I go, oh, you know what? Like, we are someone else's experience somewhere, good or bad. And so when I go through life, I do my best. It doesn't mean I always get it right, but I do my best to be a good experience for people.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. There's no agenda. It's just positive experience.
Yeah, and I think when you ask yourself the question, well, what is it to be a man? I think that's what it is, to be the person who is going to give a good experience to people. Now, it's not to say you don't challenge people's beliefs. It's not to say that you don't stand for yourself. You do stand for yourself, and you do challenge in where you challenge, but you also listen intently. And you speak with a conviction and intention, and you speak with your experience and only your experience. You don't add others' experiences unless it serves somehow, but you have your journey, your life, your truth, and you stand by it, and you listen to someone else's journey in life and their truth, and you see if you can support them. And if you can't, you can't.
And that's a good point. I want to stress on that part is, like, while we as not just men, but like men, women, humans, we as humans have a responsibility to build up those around us. But at the same time, I am a very left-leaning when it comes to social policies and things like that. But at the same time, back to my personal experience, and this lesson came through sobriety and being in rehab, is you can't help people that don't want to help themselves. And I think that there's a line that we all have to, and it's not that we desert people, that's not what I'm suggesting, but at the same time, you can't invest all of your time to build someone up that is not going to do anything. It's not going to go anywhere. And it's like, until you don't give up on them, you don't run away, but you just have to like give them space until they're ready, and then you got the green light to build them up. And I think that's a thing that I'm learning now in my life as well, because I was always, whether it was my family or whether it was like friends or people I met, I was always like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. And I became like, obsessed with like trying to get people to go down that path.
Yeah.
And it's like, just know your role, Nate. Like that's not their choice. You know what I mean? You can give people ideas, you can show them options, but to like persistently try to, not maliciously, like, because in my mind I was always helping people, but I always had to find the line.
I mean, I love that, and what I'd say is respond with your ability.
That's a great
and
answer.
Always, respond with your ability. And I've worn myself out too, and some people actually helped.
Right.
You can beat the drum enough times to the point it's like, oh fuck, this guy wants it so much for me that I want it for me now.
Yes.
Like I'm a crazy nut. We're gonna do this.
Yeah, by no means am I suggesting you try once with somebody and then you run away. That's not what I'm saying.
yeah. And that's the beauty of respond with your ability.
Yep.
Like one thing that I've learned about me is like, Cliff, you have the answer because Cliff's the answer. Just as Nate's the answer.
Right.
Just as every other individual, I go, oh shit, you mean I don't have to do it all for them? I can tell them to look in the mirror and say, look at the power that you have. Look at what you're what you're creating right now. I can do that. It was freeing for me. Because I tried to find every tool, every resource, every ability, and then I go, oh, wait a minute. It's in the human being. It's in the person. The resources come when they're resourceful enough.
I think that's a really good point to kind of tie it all up here is, you know, what it means to be a man and what it means to be a human being, especially today, is going back to what you just said was stick to your experience. And while yes, other influences will be there and other influences are going to exist on the screen to show you other people's experiences, you can be empathetic and stuff like that, but sometimes jumping different experiences and then let's just be honest, like it then becomes virtue signaling.
Yeah.
And it becomes an attention seeking thing. And that's where that's the line that I'm kind of getting at is knowing what you can contribute and what you can bring and versus what you're just superficially projecting out just to hear your own voice or to have other people hear your voice. And that's the line that I'm trying to define in my own life too.
You know, there's a piece that says, I define it. Just as your son, it was very impactful and insightful what he said. He's like, I just choose not to want that experience.
Yeah.
Like, you get to choose what experience you want.
Yep.
So you're defining all the time. And one mentor said something that I really like. He goes, some lines you draw in the sand, some lines you draw in concrete. So my concrete lines are integrity, transparency. I call it layered transparency now. And I'll explain why. Empathy, courage, and wisdom. So I'm always looking at those 5 things. So the layered transparency means, hey, I'm going to be as transparent as you're going to be. Because I've learned my lesson from being overly transparent with the wrong people. They'll use that against you.
Yep. That's power right there, man, because that's something that you taught me that the first week I met you. You know what I mean? About paying attention to who I'm talking to and what I'm talking about. And not in a secretive way, but just in a protective way, because there's ideas that are in my head and your head and other people's heads that other people can't think of. And I think there was a quote that there's a quote that some people find offensive, and I don't really mind if they do find it offensive, but there are people that are on this earth that are there, kind of go back to what you just said, what happens in front of you. I believe that like there's people here that those lessons are to tell you if you do not continue to evolve as a human being, like that's the lesson of what your future looks like. And I think that not by no means should that be interpreted as looking down on people or feeling above people, but it's back to that choice of your experience in life.
Yeah, if I ever made a mistake, and I have, and I only have the present. I can only control the present. But if I make a mistake and someone sees me make a mistake and they go, I don't want to make that mistake, that's okay. I'm not offended.
Right.
And so if a person, you can either find a reason to be offended by something, or you can find a reason to be empowered by it. You get the option. That's your choice. That's what people are like. That's the one thing everybody has. They're granted the choice. I'm going to make mistakes. And when people see it and go, oh, I don't want to do that, good on them. I'm not going to be like, what, are you judging me? Oh, I don't really care, because it's my life.
And that right there, that's what I want to close on. That's actually what I'm going to close on. That's perfect, because the key takeaway is also letting go. And it's letting go of understanding that you can't control other people. You can only control your path and how it affects your life. And as long as you can do that, then you're good to go. So I know this was a difficult conversation with the current environment that we're in, but I really appreciate your openness and transparency in this conversation. And I really believe that I don't ever say that a 1,000 people are gonna take something away, but I can almost guarantee a couple people are gonna take some quotes out of here and some good lessons out of this. And I think
Awesome.
I think that I want to close and just remind people, as I want to do more proactive reminding, that there is no script to anything that we do. There is no agenda to anything we do. I literally texted Clifford and gave a topic for today this morning, and that was our only conversation up until we went live on record. So I want more people to realize that there are a lot of podcasts out there that are scripted. There's a lot of podcasts with agendas, but there are not many that are genuinely just real, genuine human connection. And that's what exists on this show, as well as all the other ones on our network.
Amen. And I want to tell everybody, so that everyone love and light. Sometimes I get extremely passionate, and you're going to get more of that because I just like being passionate. And it's all out of love every single time, because I know the potential of the human spirit, and I just appreciate you listening.
I think that's a great point, and I encourage people as they look forward to looking at our passion and understanding, and how they can differentiate what's passion and what's anger, and sometimes they come out the same. But I think if you consistently listen to this show, you'll hear what some people interpret as anger or yelling between us. But if you really listen to what we're saying, it's such a passion for what we're trying to instill and help other people.
Amen.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thank you so much for your time today, buddy. It's always a pleasure, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you.
All right.
You all have an amazing, amazing day. Take care.
All right. Take care, man.